Welcome back to my Excel for Scientists tutorial series. Today we're going to be talking about how to visualize your data within Excel. So we're going to be making a bunch of different types of charts and graphs and walking you through how to make all of these and when is it best to do so. If you want to walk through all of this with me, you can use the link below in the description to download these files so you can walk through these with me just like it's a course. And you can also use a link in the description to download my Excel cheat sheet that's going to walk you through how to create all of these visualizations as well in an easy PDF that's completely free to download as well. So to get started today, we're going to work through how to make a pie chart, a bar chart, a group bar chart, a scatter plot, a line plot, and then also adding error bars onto your plot. So I have different sheets for all of these. And again, we're going to be working on the same type of data, looking at mental disorder prevalence in different countries. So the first thing I want to do is teach you how to create a pie chart because it's probably one of the simplest charts to use. And so in this case, we have the prevalence of mental disorders in the male and female populations in the United States in a given year. And so what I want to do is just make a pie chart with this data to be able to more clearly visualize it. So what this pie chart is going to show is what is the percentage of males versus females that have mental disorders in the US based off of these prevalences. So we're going to go into Insert, and this is where all of our charts are going to be located. And here in the bottom left is the pie or donut chart. So we're going to have a pie chart and we're going to insert this. So you can see that because these numbers are so close, they're around 50%, but the females do have a higher total prevalence of mental disorders in this case. What we want to do is now make this a little bit more appear what it's actually showing. So with any of these, we can go into here and click Select Data. And so what we want to do is edit this. So this is basically what is showing in the horizontal. So here it's just giving it a 1 and a 2 because it just knows that this was the first piece of data and that was the second. So what we can actually have is have it pull in this information. So now we already know what these things actually are. And then we can also give it a chart title or not. If you're doing things for a lot of publications, you'll probably just delete out these chart titles. And so there we go. Now we basically have a general pie chart. What we can also do is add in data labels though. So this now, and I'm going to pull it to the outside, is going to be attached to these things. So now we can actually see what percentage of all of this was. And if we want this to be a little bit clearer, we can decrease the numbers there. So now it looks a little bit more clear. So this is a really basic graph that you can do to visualize it. And what I'm going to be doing in the next video in this series is actually teaching you how to format all of these graphs so that they don't look like they came from Excel and their publication quality. But in this one, I just want to teach you how to create these graphs. So now that we know how to do it with two things, let's do it with multiple things. So in this case, we actually have in the United States in 2010, of all the disorders, what percentage came from each of these disorders. So we can see that by far the most percentage of disorders came from depression and anxiety. These are not the prevalences that we saw earlier. This doesn't mean that 31% of the population had depression. It just means that depression made up 31% of the mental disorders reported. So the importance with pie charts is you always want to make sure that whatever you're showing actually adds up to 100. If it doesn't add up to 100% or whatever you're showing isn't a factor of 100%, so for example, in this one, if there was 3 more categories here, it wouldn't have made sense to make a pie chart out of just these 2 because that doesn't really make sense in what we're trying to do because it doesn't actually equal to 100. So in this case, all of these do equal to 100, and we can check that by just doing the sum of all of these numbers, and it equals to 100. So now what we're going to do is add in a pie chart. So we're going to do it similar like we did before, but I'm actually going to include this header series and then the data. So we're going to do insert, and we're going to do a pie chart and a 2D pie chart again. Because I included this header series in here, it's automatically filling out the legend here. So again, I'm just going to delete the chart title. Generally, you won't have that. And add in data labels. So there you go. So that's a general just way to be able to visualize the depression, anxiety, bipolar, all of those things. And we can see again that by far the majority of the pie is taken up by anxiety and depression. That's basically how to create pie charts. Again, I'm going to teach you how to format these in the next video. So the next thing I want to do is create a bar chart. So in this piece of data, we're tracking the prevalence of depression over the years. So what I want to know is basically, how does this actually look through the years instead of having to look at it as numbers? So again, we're going to highlight the data that we want to make a table of, come up here and do insert. And there are two of these that look like bar charts, but there's only actually one that is a bar chart. And so in this is a column or bar chart. This is the one we want. If we do this, this is a histogram. So this is going to take all this data and try and create a statistical view of it, and you can still use this. So if we do this, this looks like nothing because our data it's only pulling the data in years. It's not even caring about this because we can't feed multiple things into that type of bar chart. So instead, we're going to go into insert, and we're going to come up here, and we're just going to do a 2D column. So why does this look weird? There's a reason for it, and it's because it's pulling in the data incorrectly. So our horizontal axis, it's just doing a number 1 through 28, and our vertical axis is mainly just has the years on it. So it's just slowly increasing over time, showing that the years are basically increasing over time. So what we want to do is come up here to select data, and we're going to edit this. And we're just going to add in the years. So again, this is going to make our horizontal axis actually the year it's supposed to be. And we're going to click OK. So now what we want to do is get rid of this series 1 because this series 1 is just the years. So if we remove this series 1, now we're actually seeing the prevalence of it through time. So delete our chart title again. We can delete this legend again because we only have one thing on here. And then we do need to add in axes titles. So I'm just going to do year. And up here, I'm going to do depression prevalence in percentage. So now we can see that initially there was a decline from 1990 to about the mid-1990s. Then there was an increase in the depression prevalence up to about 2006, 2007. It decreased a little bit and then started picking back up. And so that's a really quick way to be able to show your data. Again, wait for my next video, and I'm actually going to show you how to make this look much more publication quality. The other thing I do want to show you is on your x-axis, you can see down here is 4.55%. So this allows us to really see a clear view of this, but it can be somewhat misleading. It could look like the prevalence in 2017 is double the prevalence in 1990. And that's not actually true because it's only 4.65 to 4.85. So if we want this to look a little bit more accurate, we would click on our axis, and then it's going to bring up this format axis over here. And what we would want to do is set this to 0. And press enter. And so now we can see that the overall change has actually been very slight. We can see that there's a slightly bigger change here, and then it slightly goes up a little bit more. But even that, like, if we made this any smaller, it would literally just look like almost a straight line with maybe a little bitty bump in the middle. And so if you are doing this, you want to make sure that you're very correctly showing it and explaining it. So you could have this, and then you could have a second graph that looked like it did before with this as the auto axis. So if we reset it with it looking like this to show more the changes, but then to make it realistic that these changes are actually really minute in total. So that's how to create a bar chart. But what if we wanted to see multiple different prevalences over this time? So if we come into our group bar chart, we're going to look at the prevalences of different disorders through different decades. So 1990, 2000, and 2010. So we're going to highlight all of this. We're going to come up to data, insert, come up here, and we're going to do a bar chart. And obviously this is not pulling this data in correctly. And again, we're just going to come up here and hit select data. So what I want my axis to be is we're actually going to have our axis as the different disorders. And then our series 1, 2, and 3. So these are going to be each of the different years. So in this way, there'd be 2 different ways to fix it. If we don't want to recreate our chart, we can actually come in here and fix it through each of these. So in series 1, we can hit edit. We can have our series name is equal to the first one in it. And then the values are equal to all of these. And then we're going to hit OK. So you can see this is disappearing, and that's because all you can see right now are the years. So we're going to do this again, edit this guy, and then bring in this. Okay. And edit. Just do both. So bring in these as the values, and up here we want to bring in this as the year name. So now we have a much more appropriate bar chart. So now the question is, what if you didn't want to go through and do that? What if you had like so many different series that you didn't want to go through and do all of that individually? So instead what we would do is do this and come up here and do insert a bar chart. So then that now created that, but now we don't have series names. This is probably the much faster way to do it anyways. So now we don't have these series names. So what we would want to do is hit select data. And what we could do is just hit edit and type in the name here. But if we want to make sure that this stays dynamic, we can just click and add in the names like this. Edit, series, edit, and then click on your name. And okay, so now we have the exact same chart created 2 slightly different ways. And let's delete our chart title. So again, what we would want to do is add in access titles. So this title probably doesn't need to be added in because this is obviously pretty self-explanatory. And over here, we would want to add in depression or prevalence. Spelling is not my strong suit, guys, of that. We don't want to give it a specific name because it's the prevalence of different disorders. So we can see by far anxiety had the highest prevalence overall throughout the different years, but we can also start seeing trends between decades. So we can see that depression kind of increased from 1990 to 2000. The highest of anxiety prevalence was during the 2000s, and eating disorders have consistently increased over time, where alcohol use disorders have decreased mainly between 1990 and 2000. So this is just some general ways to visualize this data. Again, stay tuned for next week's video to see how I actually make these look a lot more like publishable quality. And we're going to instead move on into the scatter plot. So now we have the years, and what we actually want to look at is what is the correlation between depression prevalence and anxiety prevalence. So we can have this here, and I actually have a whole video coming later that gives a lot more into the how to figure out correlations and stuff like that. But this is just going to be to visualize the data. So we want depression prevalence and our anxiety prevalence. So in this case, we want to add in this scatter plot here. So we're going to do this, and this looks really strange, and that's because, as we saw before, anxiety peaked in the mid-2000s. So we have this strange relationship between these. And so what we can see here is we want to add our axis title so people know what they're looking at. And we're going to delete our chart title. So here we're going to have anxiety prevalence, and always include your units on your axis, guys. Oh, this is not anxiety. This is depression prevalence. Sorry, guys. Depression prevalence. And then this is going to be anxiety prevalence. So this allows us to just kind of see the correlation. If we wanted to add a trend line to actually get some real numbers about how these two correlate with each other, we can add a trend line by just right-clicking in your thing and clicking add a trend line. And it's going to bring up this format option over here. So we want our trend line to be linear. And we can explain or display our equation and our R-squared value. So we can see that these are, that the trend line explains 38.2% of the variation between these two, and we can see how these actually relate to each other in an equation. So this is how to create a basic scatter plot so that you can either see trends or how two things correlate with each other. So now we're going to do a line plot. And so what I actually want to see is how did these change through time? So line plots are a little bit better for showing trends than scatter plots are. So I'm going to select all of this, go up to insert, and instead of clicking this scatter plot over here, I'm going to come up to this line plot. And now again, we see that it is pulling in that year data as y-axis data. So we don't want that. We want it to instead go to select. We're going to select our horizontal axis. It's going to be the year. And we're going to remove series 1. And so now we can see our two axes. And so what I instead want to do is edit this and give it its name. And then this, give it its name. So now we can see what these actually mean. So we can actually tell now where it's going through time. If we wanted to add markers onto this, as always, we're going to delete off our chart title and add on axes titles. So here we're going to have prevalence in percentage, there we go. And we can put year here. There you go. So this is basically the simplistic nature of it. So we have a basic line plot here. Now we can see kind of when things increase and decreased over time. Again, later on, I'm going to show you how to actually create this, like we were talking about earlier, where it's formatted much better for publication. So finally, I want to show you how to do error bars. And the way to do error bars is the exact same no matter what the type of plot you're using is. I'm going to actually create a bar plot a bar chart graph real quick. So just including these different disorders and their average prevalence. So I'm going to come insert. We're going to do bar graph. There we go. So that created it really simply. We can remove that and add the axis title over here and just say prevalence percentage. So this is really nice. We have our averages. But what if we actually want to know, is depression really that different than anxiety, or is it just the averages are different? So we want to see what's the variance within the population. So if we're going to do that, what we need to do is add error bars onto this. And if you are in science, almost all of your charts are going to have error bars on it. So we're going to come up here, add chart elements, and we're going to click on this error bars. And what you can see is now all of these error bars are the exact same height, despite what is going on. And that's just not realistic. So what we want to do is now click on this. And so what it's pulling is the standard error. Well, all we've given it is averages, so it can't really find the standard error Instead, what we need to do is tell it what the standard deviations are. So we're going to click Custom and specify value. And then we can come in here and we're going to give it the exact same for both the positive and negative. So it does allow you to change it on the positive and negative if you want to. So now for the depression bar, it's going to bring in this number, but for our anxiety bar, it's going to bring in this number. So if we click OK, now you can see these are all adjusted, right? So these are all much more what we would want to see in regards to actually having error bars. And they're a little hard to see. There we go, I made them a little bit better, but they're a little hard to see just because they are so small given the amount. So we're looking at like nothing's even 0.1 and we're on a scale of 0 to 8%. So that's how you would add in error bars onto any axis that you're interested in looking at. And on things like scatter plots, if you wanted to add error bars on here, you're going to see that you actually have the option to add both horizontal. So again, you can go here. You have the option to add both horizontal and vertical error bars. So these are obviously the horizontal, and we can just delete those if you don't want them. And if you come up here, there's your vertical. And so you would do the same thing by choosing a different function and coming down to custom and adding a specific value. So that would be how you would do that, or you can just delete them off if you don't want the error bars like we did before. So that's how to create pie charts, bar charts, scatter plots, and line plots with error bars and grouping. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to format all of these so that they actually look like you would want them to look to actually put in a journal for publication. Don't forget, you can download the cheat sheet to figure out how to make all of these. And I hope this video was helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.